Well, thanks everyone for tuning in to the Upgrade Summit. And you're probably going to have a lot of numbers in your mind that you're going to have to remember. So, I'll do a little bit of an intro. So, my name's Benny. I'm calling in from Vancouver, Canada. A little bit of history about me. Was building startups since 2015, part of Y Combinator Startup School. I was one of the co-founders of CryptoKitties. Contributed to 721, which eventually became NFTs. Number 13 employee, founding team member of Dapper. And then, I was leading one of the main product teams for NBA Top Shot. So now I'm a co-founder of Future Primitive, which is learn all about it, but we're the ones behind ERC-6551. So at Future Primitive, our biggest focus is really exploring these intersections around objects and networks and narratives. The output of it usually comes in different, things. It could be consumer level apps, it could be protocol, it could be dev tooling, it could be a new Ethereum standard, which we're about to talk about. So that's Future Primitive in a nutshell. And I wanted to kind of start off the talk in terms of zooming out, right? Because a lot of times we're so deep into like the crypto side, and we get into all of the technicalities. But I like to kind of zoom out and think about the grand scheme of things before we zoom in. So one of the biggest questions that I ask myself is, where's most of human history stored, at least physically, right? And it looked, from what we understand, it's usually libraries or museums or archives. And some things to think about is the human population has grown 20x since the 1400s. We're near 8 billion now, and there's more and more of us populating planet Earth. And not only that, thinking about internet users, right? This is a little bit, I think, it's an older survey, but still relative to, thinking about how many internet users are around the world and where are they mostly, right? And the other thing is, it's pretty insane for me when I saw this, there's nearly 5,000 times more websites than the amount of books in the world. And that's only growing more and more exponential as more internet users come online, right? And I like to kind of put that into an analogy, right? So the Library of Congress is one of the largest libraries, at least in America. It's effectively the world's internet knowledge, or the websites make up about 16,410 libraries of Congress. And in terms of footprint, that basically covers the footprint of the entire New York City, and Los Angeles. So imagine those two major cities blanketed with libraries of Congress full of books. That is how much knowledge or internet websites there are. And, it's only going to continue to increase, right? We are looking at, from the AI side, like GPT-2 had 1.5 billion sources of information, and now GPT-4 is 100 trillion. So there's more and more information available now online and offline that a single person can comprehend, right? And so I really wanted to talk about our ability to record history and why that's so important and to the advancement of us as a species. And it's one of the most crucial roles that we can play, because at the end of the day, aside from startups and crypto and blockchain and tech and all of that, at the end of the day, we're all humans, right? And we all live in this same planet. And I like to kind of zoom out in that view and put perspective in things, right? But we really do have a serious problem on our hands, right? And it's this idea of public infrastructure versus private industries, right? Public infrastructures, as you all know, in the real life is bridges and libraries and national parks, and in some ways, the internet, email, Wikipedia, all this stuff, crypto, blockchain. Those are all hopefully, public infrastructure. But, private industries are, some are illustrated here. They're companies that you're probably aware of. And what's really kind of saddening is that whenever these companies shut down, it's effectively like a library going on fire, right? And we've seen that over the last several years of companies that are, have a wealth amounts of knowledge and culture and videos and photos that you've maybe uploaded or other people have. And it just gets lit on fire when it shuts down servers. And it's really kind of a sad thing that chunks of, humanities and the knowledge is just evaporated. And so, what I wanted to illustrate here before I get into 6551 and NFTs and all that is to really put that into perspective of why it's important to put things on chain, right? Putting things on chain with the purpose of keeping a record on human history, on the culture of humanity, and instead of just about magical internet money is super important. And it's way more important than the speculative aspects. And I think a lot of times people kind of miss that, right? So one thing that I've been thinking a lot about is, and these numbers obviously are evolving, but on Ethereum right now, there's like 2.1 billion transactions in total. And that's about 8 events per second. So as I've chatted here already a few minutes, there's already been probably hundreds of events that are happening, right? But think about it. Most of those transactions that are on chain has been about trading and speculating on ERC-20s. And yes, there's also 721s, but predominantly a lot of it's been around DeFi. And if you look on the bottom right, like art and culture is so small. And if you think in a wider scale, like as I mentioned, the population of Earth is 7.8 billion. There's about 5.1 internet users, and crypto is 100 million, at least in terms of wallets. So it's super, super small. Like we still have time to really grow this pie, right? And I personally think that Ethereum is relevant when it truly becomes a world computer for storing the history of humanity, the culture. We talk about on-chain culture. And so we have to kind of encapsulate these things in like, what's the purpose, right? And not just like a speculative machine. So I do believe that there's a future where art and culture, becomes the predominant reason why we are minting NFTs, why we're putting things on chain, and DeFi becomes, or speculative aspects are less important. And some of these things that you might want to put on chain are like attestations. Maybe it is ERC-20s, maybe it's 1155s, maybe it's 721s or NFTs. So that's now bridging to 6551. But before we get into that, I mean, I do want to talk about how NFTs, in my mind, since 6 years ago when we created CryptoKitties and created the 721 standard, lots of things have evolved, right? We went up and down, and there's the latest bull run. And I do think NFTs at the current state are broken because it's predominantly been really heavy on speculation, on floor price, on volume, on royalties, and not only that, all the things that you can see here, right? But let's kind of get into the nitty gritty, right? So I think that there are 3 main problems of NFTs. And these are the 3 outlined here, right? So when we were defining the 721 standard, the focus of it was, wouldn't it be interesting to have something that's on-chain, that's an object, that's unique, and then you can own it? And that's pretty much all that the 721 standard had specified. Anything beyond it, like breeding, battling, burning, all these things are custom contracts, right? The second thing is, when we designed 721, we never imagined a world of like roll-ups, right? I remember Liam was exploring state channels and, plasma, all this stuff, right? So, at that time, it was like CryptoKitties live on mainnet. And if you wanted to launch another NFT, it's either mainnet or another L1. And, these don't really connect with each other. The third is CryptoKitties and Cheese Wizards and all the early, like the first generation of NFTs, they weren't really meant as online identities. They were mostly, cute, cuddly, collectible characters. And so what was really interesting is that this PFP phenomenon had brought into the attention that, NFTs can be part of your online identity. So let's dive into the problem, right? So present day, I'm sure for most of y'all who have launched an NFT project or been thinking about it, it's really difficult, right? Like you could launch a 721 NFT contract, and then let's say one day you're like, hey, wouldn't it be so cool that we could get them to battle with other NFTs or breed them? Or wouldn't it be cool if there was like some really like interesting on-chain game mechanic? Well, hopefully you could write solidity, and hopefully your Solidity code is good enough that there's no vulnerabilities and you have to get it audited. But 6 years ago, like, I know that process was really, really difficult, especially for when we were working on CryptoKitties. And 6 years now, like, last year, we were writing a bunch of custom contracts, and I was still in shock that it's so hard. It still takes so long to write, to create something on chain. Or the other option is some folks have modified 721 or 998, and they've kind of like Frankenstein their own version and kind of expressed down there. It's expensive. It's not composable. Breeding here cannot be repurposed. The second thing is NFT bridging is broken as well, right? Like, if you have an Azuki on mainnet, if you want to bring it to Optimism, or you want to like do something on an L2 rollup, it's really difficult. You either lock it up in a centralized bridging contract, which becomes a honeypot, or you burn it and then you mint a clone. And that's kind of a broken process, right? Like, how does an NFT supposed to live across the EVM if it's going to get burnt every single time, right? And then the third thing is our wallets have become our identities, right? Most folks have ENS, and like, I'm just putting MetaMask there, but you probably use other wallets. But yeah, you connect to dApps with your wallet, you own tokens, you transfer tokens. But why is it that an NFT doesn't have the same properties? Why is it that they're static assets, one-dimensional? You keep them in a ledger or a wallet, you screenshot it for a PFP, and you just hold on to it, right? Why is it so? Why hasn't it changed in the last 6 years? So that kind of brings us to ERC-6551, or token-bound accounts. Sometimes we call it TBAs. And these are the three benefits of thinking about 6551, right? The first one is plug and play on-chain mechanics. So we see a future where if you own an NFT right now, you own the asset, right? But you don't control the utility. You're waiting on the developer of that project to ship some sort of on-chain game, and hopefully they do. If they don't, well, too bad, so sad. You own the asset, but you don't control the utility. In the near future, with something like token-bound accounts, because it becomes a generalized utility layer for NFTs, you can go to this place and plug and play, like breeding and battling, and I think that's really, really awesome, right? Because it kind of removes the dependency from the creator. The second thing is, I believe NFTs should live across the EVM chain. So it should be able to have fluidity across L2 rollups and Ethereum and all of that. And the third is, you should be able to log in as your NFT across any dApp. So instead of connecting as MetaMask or Rainbow Wallet, you should be able to connect as your Bored Ape or your Zuki, your Doodles, or Moonbirds. So the kind of breakdown of how that works, right? So every single NFT since the start of time, since 2017, CryptoKitties and everything that's in the future, every NFT already has a token-bound account. This is one of the magic tricks that I personally think is super awesome, right? In the blockchain space, there are several magic tricks. I would consider ZK proofs as one of them. Like, how do you know something but not know something? The second magic trick that I think is super crazy is flash loans. Like, how do you borrow $1 billion and kind of return it in a millisecond in the same transaction? And token-bound accounts is the other magic trick of how does it kind of prescribe an account for every single NFT in the entire Ethereum and EVM space. And so it has been achieved. It's on mainnet now and testnet. And so what you're looking at here is this future of architecture where you have apps or custom light contracts. They're still smart contracts that you plug into the TBA to give it functionality. And we think that's going to be the future of composability. The second thing is cross-chain done right. So we believe that NFTs should live on mainnet. That's where value accrual is. That's where liquidity is. That, in our minds, should be the home chain for the NFT. But if you want to experience apps, games, and vote on DAOs and all of that, we think L2 makes a lot of sense. And this is kind of some of the things that we've been working on the protocol side. Is the idea, the really interesting thing is because we use Crate2 deterministic addresses that assign addresses to NFTs. If you have a doodle on mainnet, let's say the token-bound account address is 0x123, it's the same on Arbitrum, it's the same on Optimism, it's the same on Polygon. So that means if you send an asset on Polygon to 0x123, it's owned by the doodles on mainnet. And so this self-custodial bridge will allow you to basically control the accounts across all EVM. And that's super fascinating because you can basically pay L2 gas and play a game as your doodle on mainnet. And then third of all is because every NFT has its own address now, you can have an identifier like an ENS subdomain. And not only that, the more interesting thing is your NFT can do everything a wallet can, right? You can connect to the dApp, you can own tokens, you can transfer tokens. And we think that's extremely interesting. And it really gives NFTs the same on-chain rights as a wallet. So that's kind of a high level overview of TBAs and 6551. And like I said, CryptoKitties to Azuki, they have every asset has a TBA. If you're probably wondering, how do I know what the address is? Well, tokenbound.org, you could think of it as like an Etherscan for NFTs. That's where you go and you can see all the addresses. And the really cool thing is that you can literally put any asset inside of an NFT. You can put ETH, USDC, ERC-20, 721, 1155. If, say, tomorrow you create a new token standard, ERC-9000, you can put that inside of a TBA as well. And then lastly is that you could connect to any dApp with your NFT. So just to give you an example, I did some screenshots, but literally on tokenbound.org, you can actually download a CSV of an entire collection of addresses, TBA addresses of all the NFTs, right? So you can see here all the Moonbergs, at least these ones here, they all have addresses. So if you're thinking about airdropping or, giving a gift or something, fan art, you can literally just drop it into these addresses today, and it's on mainnet. And not only that, it's the same with Azuki, it's the same for anything else. And it's not just for PFPs, like even any 721, literally, including, crypto art and all that, you can see here, they all have TBA addresses as well. And like to drive this home, like I like to make mixtape NFTs that are 721 via Zora. And so, like I said, every 721, including this mixtape video, has its own token bound account address. So that means I could drop things inside here or I could put tokens inside of this NFT. And so over the last 6 years, there have been many different attempts in kind of exploring this idea of dynamic NFTs. There was 998, and there's several other protocols that have kind of dove down in this space. But none of those protocols or standards actually fit these criteria. The first thing I will say is ERC-6551 is not a token standard. A lot of people get confused and they think 6551 is replacing 721 or 1155. It's not. It's actually an Ethereum standard that links every NFT with a smart contract wallet. So how does it work? What are the design criteria? So it works with all existing NFTs, backwards compatible and future-proof. You can hold literally any asset, any tokens inside. Number 3 is there's no wrapping contracts. So contrary to some of the earlier implementations where you have to wrap your NFT, you don't have to do that. Number 4 is because simply this is a wallet, a smart contract wallet, just like Gnosis Safe in some ways. It works with all existing platforms. So that's super awesome. And then number 5 is it's fully decentralized. So every single NFT, if let's just say there's 500 million NFTs on Ethereum on mainnet, literally there's 500 million smart contract accounts. So each NFT gets one. And the NFT has full custody of it. The other way to think about it, if you're more technical, it's kind of like a multi-sig with one signer, which is the NFT. So how are TBAs different from EOAs? Well, it has all the same properties of an EOA, but there's no seed words, there's no private keys. The other way to think about this is account abstraction or AA for NFTs. And we really do believe that the marriage between NFTs and AA, it creates the perfect mix that NFTs now can become your full on-chain identity. We get this question a lot of like, what's 4337, what's EOA, what's TBA, what's 6551. I know there's a lot of terminology. At the end of the day, the way I describe it is there's this huge wave that's been forming for the last 2 years. And this huge wave is around improving user experience across the board. And this wave is what I call the account abstraction wave, right? And it's a wave that's meant to replace some of the rough UX that you've experienced with private keys and seed words and all of that. And so, token bound accounts are on that wave. We're part of the AA movement, except we just have a different surfboard, right? Our surfboard is fully focused on NFTs. And we don't, we're not really creating accounts for DeFi apps or all that, right? So that's how you kind of like frame where this all sits in. And importantly to note that 6551 is compatible with 4337. So everything that like Paymaster, Bundler, all that type of stuff, the architecture of it, it's all compatible. So I wanted to blast through a bunch of use cases because, we talked really high level about like the world and about information, about humanity. And then we talked about NFTs and now 6551. So I do want to, finish up with like, here's some ideas to kind of hopefully stir the creativity inside of you. So for gaming, gaming is a really big one, right? Like you could think of token bound accounts as a decentralized inventory system. Every PFP now has like a backpack or an inventory system. That means you could carry items and weapons and armor and all these things, and it's fully decentralized, which is super cool. So that's what Galverse is doing. Is that, the Gals, they're a PFP, and now they have like things dropped inside. There's an emergence of like bring your own NFT, where like now you can log in as your doodle and play a game with other NFTs. Parallel, they're a top 20 NFT. They're building a AAA Unreal Engine 5 game where the characters are NFTs, and they have token-bound accounts where they can collect tokens in the game. For DAOs, what's really interesting is Coop Records from Cooper. What they've been working on is a NFT fan pass for a musician, Daniel Allen. And every 2 weeks, they're dropping music NFTs inside of that fan pass. So you could think about, like, what does it mean to have, like, some sort of, like, reoccurring subscription to music or photos or whatnot. Station's building a NFT membership platform where all the badges and stickers and POAPs are now put inside of a membership, NFT membership. And you might be asking, why would you do that? You can already have it all in MetaMask. The thing is, when you're in MetaMask, it's all one singular layer, right? And so if you sell the membership, you still hold the POAPs and the soulbound tokens. It kind of messes with the hierarchical relationship between them, right? The other thing that we've been exploring since Eve Waterloo is this idea of RDF, or retroactive DAO formation. And the idea is that, because NFTs can hold tokens, you can drop an ERC-20 governance token inside of NFTs collections. And then because every NFT has a wallet, they can be a signer on a multisig. So you're forming DAOs from the bottom up. And in some ways, you're almost reviving dead projects and that are run by the community. Social networks, so Lens Protocol, version 2 of the profiles, because everything in Lens is NFTs, nesting things and creating what we call a token graph is super important, because then you have the hierarchical relationships and ownerships on chain. And then Pinata is building a token graph visualizer. Tribes is building a Web3 messenger where you can log in as your NFT and talk to other NFTs. Fashion is super cool. This is kind of where we've been spending our last year and a half on. We worked with Jeff Staple to launch Sapiens. And essentially, it's a PFP collection where you can equip digital clothing. And of course, the Sapiens has a TBA that owns the clothing. We've also teamed up with BBC to launch several awesome projects. And then IYK is exploring physical to digital using token-bound accounts when you tap onto the chips on the clothing. So wrapping up now, now that you've kind of went through the whole emotions of from the highest level all the way to what is actually tangible, I think the message I want to leave with you guys is, to create on-chain culture, we must produce more cultural assets that can be, animations, that can be 3D assets, that can be photos, that can be videos, that could be mixtapes. We just need to output more. We need to, and Zora has been leading that charge a lot, but something that I would leave with you guys is like, this is such an important moment in all of our times being builders in this space. And, think about what it means to create on-chain culture. And the other thing is, if you're collecting, collect NFTs, collect these things because you love it. not collect it because you can flip it and make a return, right? And so that's kind of the last message I'd leave you guys with, thinking about on-chain culture and how token bound accounts are going to be the driver of that force for NFTs. So yeah,